Today we've got another little pocket LED, and this one's from Ambitful, but it's got a couple of useful tricks up its sleeve, so let's get into it. So there are tons of these little lights on the market now, and so much so that I honestly don't really love doing these reviews anymore because the differences are just so small. Of course, different brands, different prices, which is a big one, maybe different designs, different build qualities in some cases, but as far as the light that they output, the features that are built into them, and the way that they work, they're all just so similar. The problem with that is just that it makes it really difficult to recommend one really strongly. You know, for some people, the cheapest option might be what they're looking for. For other people, it might be the strongest with the most functions and the brightest light output. So it really is going to just depend on a user-to-user basis, and also just what's available to you. Some of these are cheaper or more expensive in one country, or some of them are just not as available in one country or another. So the differences don't really make it easy to strongly recommend one or the other. But this one does have a couple of features that I think make it in the more unique end of this category. So we're going to take a look at it today, and I'm just going to introduce it to you. I'm not going to necessarily recommend it one way or the other, but I'll put all of the facts out there on the table and let you make the decision. So let's look at what this light has. You've got RGB light with HSI and RGBW modes. RGBW gives you control over each of the three main colors, as well as the daylight and tungsten white light LED diodes. And that's great. More control is always a good thing. Of course, that bicolor white light has a wide range from 2500K to 8500K, and it puts out a pretty solid light quality. You have a CRI ranging from just under 94 at 5600K daylight, gradually improving up to around 98 at either 2500 or 8500K. The SSI goes from 75 at daylight to 86 at tungsten. Overall, pretty solid results. As far as pure brightness, this is pretty much in the middle of the group from what I've tested so far. I tested it at 230 lux from 1 meter, brightest around the daylight settings, or in practical terms, it lit this photo from 1 meter away with the camera settings that you see on screen. At 0.5 meters, if you want to draw comparisons to specs of other lights online, I got between 815 and 890 lux, depending on the color temperature. The included silicone diffusion dome, which we'll talk about in just a second, does cool down the light just a little bit, no more than about 250K from what I could find. And of course, it does cut down the light output just a little bit, as you can see with the adjusted exposure and camera settings for this shot, which has the diffusion dome on. Now, the actual color of the light output is pretty close to what is displayed on screen. I have seen more accurate lights, but it's not bad at all. It's a few hundred Kelvin cooler than it should be according to the display at the most extreme, and that's kind of right in the middle of the range where those two types of white light diodes are mixed. I don't think it will cause too many problems in practical use unless you are mixing it with another light or other lights that are skewed off in maybe the other direction. Again, this is pretty typical though, and while I have seen better performance, this is not the worst I've seen either. There are 29 special effects built into here, which does sound like a lot compared to other lights, which usually max out around 20, but keep in mind that 7 of these are basically just presets for the RGB color. You do get some control over the speed and the intensity of those special effects, and again, control is great. The more control, the better, so it's a good thing to see in here. But the believability of those special effects I found to be a little bit subpar, especially things like lightning and fireworks that are just a little bit too regular in their intervals to really be believable. The battery life on this is average. It's about 2 hours at full power with the 3000 milliamp hour battery built in, and it recharges in about 3.5 hours with the 5 volt 2 amp type C USB. The really good thing about that 3000 milliamp hour battery though is that it can also function as a power bank. It can output power to charge your phone, for example, which is always a good additional feature to have because it makes this little light a lot more handy to actually bring with you on a day-to-day basis. Now, to turn that on, just long hold the function button and scroll through to the power bank option where you can turn it on. Physically speaking, there's only a USB-C port on here, not a USB-C type A. So if you have something like the standard iPhone charging cable, for example, you can't use it with this, which is a downside to the upside of having that power bank function. You do get wireless control of this via a mobile app, as well as they claim an RC11 remote control, which unfortunately is not included. I guess it's sold separately. And that's too bad, because I think that including a physical remote control instead of needing to rely on a wireless app on your phone to control this would be another great way to help it to stand out from the already crowded market that this is in. Another thing that I noticed is that updating the firmware on here seems like it does require a USB connection to a computer instead of being able to do that through the mobile app, which is unfortunate. The app itself, though, is really easy to use as long as you are set on the correct and matching group and channel. Again, long hold the function button on the light to jump into the submenu where you can select your group and channel so that it matches that of the settings in the app. As long as those are the same though, just open the app and it connects. I didn't have to jump or deep dive into any of the deep settings on my phone. Very easy to connect. I also have very few, if any, complaints about the app itself. It works well, it has a decent amount of control. The only thing I guess I could say is that it is rather simple if you compare it to some of the more full-featured apps on the market. No color picker mode, for example. Little things like that. But as far as controlling the functions that are built into the light itself, it works very smoothly, easily, and intuitively. As far as the build quality goes, it does feel pretty solid. It's made out of some sort of metal, I'm guessing aluminum. I weighed it at 335 grams, which is a little bit on the heavy side. It's obviously by no means heavy. It's still small, but it is a little bit on the heavy side compared to some of the others. Part of that though is due to this little extra on the back, which we will talk about in just a second. On the front of the light, we have that kind of frosted diffusion to cover up the LED diodes that maybe cuts back on the harshness just a little bit, but it is not enough to erase that multiple shadow effect that you often get with these panel style LEDs. Again, that's where that silicone diffusion will come in, and popping this on will give it enough diffusion to cut out that multiple shadow effect. So effective, it works. And this does pop on pretty easily, and it does have cutouts all around it so that way you can still access all of the buttons, all of the switches, all of the ports and screw threads, everything on the body of the light. Speaking of screw threads though, on the actual body of the light you do get a single 1/4-20 screw thread on the bottom, but there is nothing on any of the other sides. Unfortunately, you only get that one. Now that's a little bit forgivable because it does have this arm on the back here which can fold out from the light to help you to mount it in some different ways and some different angles. It can fold out. It's got a 2-part arm here, and it can also rotate. And then there are a bunch of screw threads around, I guess you could say, the tip of that arm. It's also solid enough. The hinges are solid enough that it's not going to fall under the weight no matter what angle you put it on. You can use this to help you sit it on a table very easily. Because it twists, you can also use it vertically. But again, of all of these many screw threads on the tip of this arm, none of them are 3/8 inch. They're all 1/4-20 screw threads. So if you have more professional mounts, more heavy duty mounts with 3/8 inch screw threads, you're gonna need some sort of adapter to make this work. That's not a problem that I think many people will come across, so don't worry about it, but I just wanted to point it out. Otherwise though, having this arm on here is great. I think I saw a similar design with a arm on the side of the light a few years ago with maybe the Bowling P1 or something like that. And it was nice. It worked really well. It helped again to stand it up on a table or just to get it at some different angles without having to have an extra ball mount or anything like that. It's all built into the light. You can even kind of angle this forward a little bit because the weight of the arm does kind of counterbalance it. So if you wanted to aim down at something that's sitting on the table, you could do that very easily. So you don't need a lot of extra accessories to use this, which is always a great thing. And of course, price is going to be key for most people in making this decision, as I said, and this comes in at about $120. That may vary depending on where you are, but that's kind of right in the middle of the pack, again, with all of these many pocket LEDs that are on the market. And I think that for the most part, this does deserve the price. I think the battery life could be a little bit better. I think they could have included a USB type A connection here to really get the most out of that power bank feature. Including that RC11 remote would have really set this apart, but at least the app is very easy to use. No problems that I could find. It's solid, it's got pretty decent light quality as well as fairly predictable color output in white light mode. Overall, it's not perfect, but I think they did a pretty good job with this light. But if you have any other questions or comments, please do let me know down below and I will do my best to get back to you. Otherwise, if you like this video or found it helpful, please do consider giving it a thumbs up, subscribe to see more in the future, and as always, thank you for watching.